the number one question is, I always get the driver that's a little resistant about this and about the process is say, how would you feel if you were to hit, a mother crossing the street with her child in the stroller? And this is why we need to, do the assessment to make sure that you are safe.
Welcome to Absolute Trust Talk with your host, Kirsten Howe. Absolute Trust Talk brings you tips, tools, advice, and interviews to help you build a reliable knowledge base on estate planning, business, and finance to start preparing for your future today.
Welcome to the Facebook Live version of Absolute Trust Talk podcast. My name is Madison Gunn. I'm an attorney with Absolute Trust Counsel and your host today. I am very excited for today's show. We are going to be talking about an option that you have if you think that a senior in your life maybe shouldn't be driving anymore. This is a little bit of a hot button topic because everyone's afraid of it. So we're going to get that squared away. My guest today is Melanie Henry. She is the founder and CEO of a Bay Area service called Driver Cognitive Assessment Center. And as Melanie will tell you, it's DCAC, not ACDC. Melanie's background includes social welfare, risk assessment. She was a case manager, supervising caseworkers with a child abuse criminal investigations unit in Australia, which I feel like we could have a whole separate podcast on, but that's off topic. A senior caregiver and a licensed driving school instructor. In her spare time, she provides medical rides to Tri-Valley seniors with a local nonprofit called Senior Support Program of the Tri-Valley. And Melanie holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Welfare Studies from Western Sydney University in Australia and is currently participating in ongoing training in the driver rehabilitation specialist field. Melanie is also a member of the Association for Driving Rehabilitation Specialists, known as ADED, the National Council of Certified Dementia Practitioners, and a board member of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the National Aging in Place Council, of which I am the chair. And she is a member of the Pleasanton Chamber of Commerce. So Melanie is very involved. Hi, Melanie.
Hello. Thank you.
I'm so glad you are here today to talk about DCAC and what resources you can provide to the senior community and their families. Jumping right in, if someone is worried about their parent driving or thinks they should no longer be driving, what should they do? Should they just call you?
Yes, please give me a call. It's complimentary. My time is theirs. And anyone who's got any concerns or worries about their parent, they're seeing a general decline. Maybe there's some red flags going on with the vehicle. It's got all these scratches and scrapes that are unexplained. Maybe the mailbox is a little more dinged up and the garage door has a big, chunk out of the wood. They can definitely call. Or maybe mum or dad has had a diagnosis recently and they're just not sure whether it's still safe for them to drive. They can definitely give me a call. Really anything, any kind of situation where there's a change in the general decline. Maybe their mum is starting to forget how to balance the checkbook, but she was always in charge of that before. Maybe starting to get lost going to the store, not remembering general details about life that she used to be pretty good at. So they can give me a call. And I do want to start off by saying that this service that I offer is not about taking away somebody's driver's license. It's about identifying those that are at risk of, having a serious collision. So it's more important about protecting the good, safe drivers, that just because you're 85 or you have diabetes or you have congestive heart failure, it doesn't mean that you're unsafe to drive. And so this is a science-based evaluation that's been backed by research and award-winning technology that kind of will test for all of that. So, yeah.
Do you have to, for the seniors, I mean, obviously, Susie can't call and force her mom into your center. So how do you get the seniors involved themselves in terms of getting the assessment done? Because I'm sure they're scared they're going to get their license taken away.
Yeah, this is a really anxiety-producing scenario for not only the driver, but also their family. And so a lot of people know about my service through searching on Google, or their doctors have told them about it, and they can call. Any family member can call. So it can be, the spouse, it can be an adult child, it can even be like a close family friend. Get the information and they can give me a ring. And ideally, I want to be able to speak with the driver, because part of my responsibility and my goal is to make sure that their concerns are eased. Everyone's nervous when they come in. It's very normal. It's a very comfortable setting here. I try to use a lot of compassion. I understand how difficult this process is, and I want them to be as relaxed as possible when they come in, because I want them to be able to do their very best.
Great. And what types of assessments do you offer? I know there's a couple.
Yeah, so everyone starts off with what's called the Drive-Able Cognitive Assessment Tool, and the acronym for that is the DCAC. And what it is, it's a computerized cognitive assessment. It looks like a computer system, operates like a computer system, but you do not need to know how to use a mouse. You touch the screen like you would on a microwave, and you press one of 3 buttons. And there are test cards, and the person is not alone. They're guided through it, and there are 6 task areas that are looking at how the mental abilities are interacting as they relate very specifically to driving. And so the person that's sitting there, this is designed for an experienced driver. This isn't for a new 17-year-old driver that may be having some kind of cognition issue. So they come in and they're sitting there with me. They're guided through the assessment, and there's an opportunity for practice, because I need to know that they understand as best as they can what's being asked of them. And then we guide them through that. And so the assessment is objective, it's fair. There's a 2-page color report, and it's going to, like I was saying, look at these 6 task areas that really, it's the only cognitive driving assessment that I know of and that's available around the world that is measuring for this interaction. So that one will predict how well a person will perform on the road. It identifies risk factors. It also assesses whether their cognitive mental abilities are in fact affected, and then what percentage. And that's the first part in the process. And then the second part is what's called a DOOR, and it's a Drive-Able on-road evaluation. We have a specialized road course that was built for us by Drive-Able, and that one measures the types of errors that people with a cognitive impairment make that are different to normal healthy drivers. And just backtracking here, the DCAC, how do we determine the results? It's age normed and standardized. And what that means is that the results are compared to another driver that's a healthy, normal driver. It's not my opinion or your family's opinion. It's based on science. So the DOOR is the same kind of concept, where it's age normed, it's standardized, it's based on research. And the person comes out in a dual control instructor vehicle that we have. I have a brake and a gas pedal, thankfully. And we go out on the road, and this one measures the types of driving mistakes that someone with a cognitive impairment or a medical issue is making that is different to a normal healthy driver. So we all know that like left-hand turns at intersections are extremely dangerous, because that part of the processing in the brain has become compromised, where it's really difficult to judge distance and depth perception. So that one gives the driver an opportunity to go out on the road, demonstrate their driving abilities, and they're graded. It's put into the computer system, which is an algorithm base, compared against all of the research, and that one is a pass or a fail. But not every driver needs to come back and do that one, Madison. It depends on where they score. So if they come back and the results say that they may be mildly cognitively affected, their driving skills, then we want further information. And so that's where that particular assessment comes into play. It's not like a DMV assessment where the DMV will take you out and they want to test your knowledge of the road rules. This is one that's looking at the types of errors, the frequency, the severity, whether me as the instructor needs to intervene, whether another driver on the road needs to get out of the way. It's a very specialized evaluation.
Like reaction times.
Yes,
like that.
Everything. Yeah. Are they scanning? Are they seeing whether there's a pedestrian or a cyclist on the road? Are they stopping for the red traffic light? Are they, turning left at an unprotected yield left turn sign? And are they accommodating for the oncoming traffic and being able to make those decisions in a safe manner and a timely manner as well? Yeah. There's a lot that goes on with that.
And how do you provide your clients and their families the results? How does that work?
The results. So in terms of receiving them?
Yeah, do you tell them in your office? Do you tell the family, but not I'm assuming you tell the client first.
Right.
But.
When I have contact with the family to begin with, I need obviously the cooperation of the driver to come in. There are a number of forms. We follow HIPAA very closely, and the driver needs to give consent and permission to who they want to receive a copy of the results. So whoever's nominated on that documentation will get the copy. So quite often I have families where they don't want to have the doctor involved yet. There's a strong enough, a good enough relationship between mother, father, whoever it is, and the adult child that they want to work this out together. And so in most of those cases, the parent would give consent for the daughter or the son to also get a copy of the results. In other cases, depending, sometimes there's cultural reasons, or there may be, a standard in the family where you don't ever question the parent. Those adult kids will want to have the doctor request the referral, make the referral and get the report received to them, and then the family would go and visit with them. So it really depends case by case. I'm very much guided by those consent forms, and I do not send the reports to the DMV because I'm not a medical practitioner. The DMV is very much guided by what the doctor submits in terms of the driver medical evaluation form. And this helps to guide, obviously, their decision-making around whether it's safe or not for their patient to drive. But it really does depend on case by case. I'm, certainly follow HIPAA policy like every other health professional.
Great. And other than like a family member sending a referral, what are other reasons that a senior or any client, I guess it doesn't have to be a senior, would get an assessment from you?
Where the doctor has noticed that there's a decline in the person's general functioning, maybe they have a medical condition like they've recently been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, maybe they have congestive heart failure, maybe they've had a stroke, maybe diabetes if it's not being treated, even sleep apnea can affect driving skills. So it can be it's usually for a range of medical reasons, but we all know with this pandemic that a lot of our seniors have been stuck at home, they've been told to self-isolate. They therefore have not been driving as much, and families are seeing a real decline. So a lot of people just want to have a baseline for their mum or dad and come on in that way. Same with the doctors and neurologists as well.
That's a great idea, having it as a baseline.
Yeah,
I never thought about it that way.
Because as we get older, we typically have more medical and health issues. That's just the reality of aging, and it's good to have that baseline, especially when you've had a recent diagnosis or you're just starting to see those changes. The other really important thing that's come out of some of the latest research is that if a person's had 2 or more falls in the year, they really should have a neurological assessment, should have a driving assessment, because they're finding there's a real correlation between that and driving skill decline.
That's interesting. And so if a doctor reports somebody to the DMV, your report, does it work for an appeal to the DMV, or does it just go back to the doctor to have the doctor basically rescind their report if they turn out to not have any problems driving?
If the family know about my service, and that's, terrific about today, trying to spread the word as fast and wide as we can. So that really depends. So if the DMV has contacted the driver and they've suspended or revoked their license, the family or the driver contacts me and they come in for the DCAC, the first portion. They may come in for the on-road evaluation, but they need to have a special permit to be able to do the on-road portion.
Right.
Most of the times those drivers will give permission for the report to be sent to the doctor because they want the doctor to upgrade the driver medical evaluation and their opinion, their recommendation. And so they will then submit that to the DMV for review. If there's a driver out there and you've just received a notice and the doctor has told the DMV that they don't want you driving, there are unfortunately some drivers that don't have this conversation even with their patients, and you find out from the DMV. Then you can give me a call and I can help you through that. And you have the right to an appeal. You have to do it within 10 days. And there are some steps that you can take, and it's called a special permit, and it's through the driver safety office. It's not through the regular DMV. And you explain to them that you would like to have a further review of your driving skills, and you really need to be your own best advocate and, ask your doctor for their support to be able to do this. And the information's just so useful for everyone involved, because the DMV, at the end of the day, the DMV is truly going to be guided by what the doctor is advising. So the more information that can be obtained, the better for everyone, especially the driver.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And I understand that you have services that you offer for seniors either that haven't driven in the last few years due to the pandemic, or, once you hit 70 and you have to start retaking that test, which I know just inserts panic for seniors everywhere that they have to take a test that they haven't taken in 55 years. So what do you offer in that sense?
Yeah. So it's called a mature driver refresher together session. And they're very specifically catered for what that driver needs. So, but the bulk of it will be covering, building up, reviewing their defensive driving habits and making sure that they're scanning and that they're using their mirrors. Like what I see a lot of and what the research shows is that as we get older, we tend to use our mirrors less. And there are some really easy strategies for fixing up the mirrors so that you can really reduce the blind spot, which typically on most cars is about 12 feet in length. And you can tweak the side mirrors so that you can really minimize that. You can, what I try to do is called fit the car to the driver. Quite often, you can shrink in stature as you age. And so the seat may in fact be too low, but there are like booster cushions that can help if you have an older car where it doesn't have an electric seat that can rise up and down. There's a lot of groovy tools out there now that can really help, like seatbelt extenders. If you have an old shoulder injury, arthritis that you can't kind of plug in properly, or it's too hard to turn around and you need to get the seatbelt, there's an extender that you can pull down over your shoulder as well. So that's all kind of included in it. But I offer a refresher together session. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3. It's usually around 1 hour, 1 to 1.5 hours maximum. And we go out on the road together in the instructor vehicle, first of all, for the first half hour, just to make sure that you are safe to drive and I'm not going to lose all my hair. And then we go out in the driver's car and, I come to you to where you live, or you can come over to my office area here in Pleasanton and take you out. And we're basically reviewing all of the defensive driving. We're going over the road rules. We're going over the things that have been challenging for you. So one of the big things that's changed are all the bike lanes here in the Bay Area.
Right.
A lot of seniors, as they get older, they have trouble with their neck flexibility and being able to see over your shoulder, but you need to be able to do that. But there's some tips and strategies for that. And really the goal then is, improving their confidence so that they do feel better about getting back behind the wheel. If they don't drive on the highways, that's perfectly fine. We don't go out on highways anyway. The DMV can give you a restricted license around that. And then I also keep a pile of the DMV Senior Handbook, Driver Handbook. And, on YouTube, there's the California website for DMV. They have some really good videos on there. I wouldn't recommend you go anywhere else but on the DMV California website on YouTube. And so I really try to be a resource for people, to educate, to give as much information as I can and keep as many of our safe drivers out there on the road as we can, protecting them. Not discriminating, but identifying the ones that are unsafe, that need to give up the keys. It doesn't stop there. I don't just give them the report and say, let them go on their merry way. I will work really hard with the family to connect them with all of the transportation options in the area that they live so that everything is in place. And if there's a lot of conflict in the family, which quite often there can be if the person has cognitive impairment that's progressed so far that they're not aware that their driving is an issue. They still think that they're a great driver. Sometimes involving a geriatric care manager or an aging life care professional can really help with mediation and help kind of calm the situation down at home. And, the number one question is, I always get the driver that's a little resistant about this and about the process is say, how would you feel if you were to hit a mother crossing the street with her child in the stroller? And this is why we need to, do the assessment to make sure that you are safe. Yeah. And so there are lots of tips and strategies, and I'm happy to share all of that with people when they call me. There's no charge for any of that as well.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that you provide this service so that you.
Thank you.
I just think it's great. And I will think anytime I see a news story about someone going into a business, in an accident, driving into a shopping center or something like that, I'm going to immediately be like, they should have called Melanie.
Yeah. I mean, it's one part of the process. I mean, I don't have access to the driver's medical history. I don't have all the rest of it, but the report's really visual. It's in color. It looks like, the traffic light colors. It starts off in green, goes into orange, goes into red. Red is highly cognitively affected. You really should not be driving anymore. So the fact it just gives all this other information, it's a snapshot in time of that person's current functioning. And it really does help to give families this peace of mind, because a lot of, families, they have an opinion that, mum shouldn't be driving, but she's not going to listen to me. This helps to kind of share that burden with something that's science-based and accurate.
Do you find that when people get their results that they are receptive, or do they call you irate? How does that I know there's probably is no normal look to it, but it does depend. Some people are very, very upset and they want to have a repeat assessment, and I can offer that, but I need to have a certain waiting period so that the person isn't remembering what the task areas were, trying to improve on that. Right. There's usually like a 10-day turnaround, and usually there's a valid reason for that. And I would normally have offered that if I think that there's something else going on, or maybe the person comes in and they don't feel well, or they've had some bad news. I mean, hopefully we've rescheduled, but sometimes things happen on the morning of and they still come across to the office to do this. So it really does depend. But yeah, there are some people that are upset, but I have a case management background. I have big shoulders and I have a job to do here to support as many as I can. So, I'm a compassionate, caring person. I'm going to listen to what they say and I'm going to, explain it as best I can. But sometimes, we need mediation, and the beauty of technology is we can all jump on a Zoom call, or we can have like a 3 or 4-way call with the driver and other family members that live out of the state, for example, and just go over it all. But yeah, it really depends case by case, Madison. Yeah. That's great. Well, yeah. I'm glad there was no horror stories that just came out that came to mind immediately. So that's
yeah, I could. I'm happy to share some stories with obviously no names. I did have one gentleman that was very wealthy, and his kids kept taking the keys away from him. They were very worried, and he was starting to show not just cognitive decline, but physical decline. Like he was, this is another red flag. Are they starting to have trouble getting in and out of the car seat, like especially these sports cars or sedans where the seats are really low, and then having to hold onto the car completely to get around? Well, there's a big red flag there, because do they actually have the muscle strength and the reaction time to be able to shift their foot from the gas pedal to the brake really quickly? And do they have the strength to be able to hold down? Do they have that endurance that's needed? I mean, driving can be fatiguing. And yeah, this fellow, he would just go out and buy another car. And it was really challenging for the family, because when you go to buy a car, some of these dealerships don't even ask to look at your driver's license.
Sure.
So, and his had been
not a requirement.
Not a requirement. And his had been suspended. So yeah, that was a case where we needed to have geriatric care manager involved and worked intensively with the family. But he's now hooked up with all of the transportation services and Uber and another service called GoGo Grandparent, which has, been pretty well received from what I've heard from some other people that have started to use that. And then, I've had another gentleman in Berkeley, and he was then connected with a volunteer driver program in his local area. He qualified for that. So that was helping to get him around town. And then here in the Tri-Valley, we have some amazing programs. We have a volunteer driver program for medical rides through senior support. And then we also have through Wheels, through LAFTA, Livermore Amador Valley Transit Authority, we have a Wheels para-taxi program that's a reimbursement program for people who can no longer drive. They'll get some reimbursement back for their taxi fares. And so there's a lot of good supports and resources around. So yeah,
that's great. Yeah. I mean, with just Uber, I mean, not only are teenagers not getting their licenses anymore, but it's no longer that housebound sentence for seniors when they can't drive anymore.
Yeah. There's some good options. I mean, it's difficult. It's a really challenging time, and I think families need to be really mindful of, giving up the keys. It's like the last piece of your true independence for many. Yeah. It was a rite of passage when you're 15, 16, and you've been a good driver for so many years, and now things are changing. And I think families, everybody needs to be more sensitive about that and really keep a close eye on your loved one, because, the reality is that person may be a little bit more socially isolated for a while. There's pressure on the family to pick up the rides to help mum or dad get around to their appointments. So sometimes I see more stress in families because a lot of those families, those adults are still working. And just be really mindful about depression, just keeping a really close eye, because it is a huge change in that person's life when they do give up the keys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Melanie. I've got a couple questions that have come through, and some of them you might have already answered. So we'll just kind of go through. One says, are you a mandated reporter to DMV, which you said you're not, but I'm going to tweak that and say, do you have to provide that information to their doctor, to a patient's doctor, or that's only if they request?
Yeah, it's only if they request, and only, well, not if the DMV requests. The DMV, I don't have any contact directly with them, but if the person's given consent, then the report would go to their doctor. In most cases, if somebody comes back and the person's not coming to the appointment by themselves, then I don't want them driving. I need them to arrive as fresh as a daisy mentally, because it's a challenging assessment and it's a snapshot in time of their current functioning. So usually, I can't think of one case. Everyone's coming with someone that they trust, someone that cares deeply about them, someone that's a support. And, those consents are then signed off, and then I would send the report to the doctor. But sometimes the families, like I was saying earlier, they just want to make the decision themselves and not have it get to that late stage where the doctor is involved. But it all depends on the relationship they have with their loved one. If it's a difficult relationship, or they're out of town, they're out of state and they can't be here, and they arrange for maybe a neighbor to bring the person over, then quite often the doctor may be more heavily involved. Yeah, I urge everyone, if you can, if you're still sitting on the fence after getting the report and you're not sure about this, they've got to speak to their physician, because they're the ones who know their patient the best. They have all of the rest of the information about what the next step should be.
Yeah. All right.
You did ask me another question.
Yeah, I do have one more question. Okay. And one is, do you only assess seniors, or do you also assess people that have, might have other cognitive impairment, but maybe just are not seniors? So, I know people have traumatic brain injuries or other cognitive special needs that, obviously they're not getting maybe not getting a license at 16. It might be 25, but also that stuff can change. So
the technology that is provided by DriveAble that I'm licensed for is really geared for experienced drivers. It's not for what we call novice drivers, new drivers, or drivers with special needs that are learning to drive when they're 25. Quite often they need intensive behind the wheel instruction, sometimes up to 40 hours of one-on-one with an instructor, and then additional, double that time with family. So not usually special needs in terms of youth or young adults, but certainly people that have had brain injury. Quite often my clients have had a stroke, or they have, a concussion. They've had some other kind of injury where it needs to be evaluated. But the timing of that's really critical. You don't want to do it too early in the process of their healing, because, I don't want to be here wasting anybody's time and money either. So quite often the timing of that's critical. But I am excited to say that I'm in the process of undergoing more training with ADED, which is the Association for Driver Rehabilitation Specialists, so that I'll be able to offer additional assessment for people that do have some special needs, and also some of those other impairments like visual and physical, and be able to, help them with adaptive controls for their cars. So that's exciting.
That's
Stay
great.
tuned.
I never even thought about, like, when you were saying to address their own vehicle and make sure that everything fits right. And all I could think about was how horrible it is when you have to switch cars with your spouse, and like how you have to like move all of the mirrors and move the seats and move the steering wheel, and how that would be for a senior having to do that just because they're, they can't sit up straight that day, or, certain things that it would affect. And I never really thought about that. And I think that that's a great service that you provide.
And I want to do that on a wider scale. Hopefully in the fall. I've just completed training with a program called CarFit, run by the AAA and AARP. And I want to bring this to the Bay Area as a wider community event where we'll have volunteers and we'll all get trained. Everyone will get trained, and we'll have, groups around the Bay Area, and seniors will come in, and in their car, it's a 20-minute process, and they'll get assessed and get fitted for their cars. So I'm really excited about that. It operates in Southern Cal, but for some reason it wasn't here in Northern Cal. So I just flew out to Oregon recently to get that training, and excited to bring that because, it's pretty essential that everyone's super comfortable in their car, because Otherwise it makes driving really difficult.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we take our car seats to the fire department to make sure they're installed correctly. We should make sure that our parents are installed correctly in their cars too.
Good point.
That's a good, make sure they can still see out those mirrors or at least know how it should be adjusted correctly and things like that. So I think that's great. Melanie, I appreciate you coming so much. I am so excited that you are a guest today.
Thank you.
If anybody needs to reach Melanie, she is available at 925-249-5947. And her website is www.dcacbayarea.com. And so she can help you with any assessments or questions for your family members or your own needs if you're listening for yourself. So thank you very much, Melanie. I appreciate you coming, and I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Everyone stay safe there out on the roads.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcouncil.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is not meant to take the place of legal advice from an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you do have a legal question or issue, please consult with an attorney.